Now royalty, all liberties reserved. Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, then we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, but she could cool Ali, S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, then we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, with no true Ali, S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, then we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, but she's a cool Ali, Matriarch is what we reference, screw your patriots. I'm aiming for you stateless chattel more than colonists. Yeah, I rock that black fat, gold tassel. Just call me Wonder Woman with that golden lasso. Flexing on all you pastors degenerates. I'm coming for everything, yeah, I'll man the shit. Y'all been waiting for too long, so I'm bucking back. Where I'm from ain't no acquiescence and no time for that. Empress, smaller bodies, yeah, that's who I am. Woolly hair, broad nose, F Napoleon. They say the last shall be first, so we back again. No hoes barred, repping for my nation. S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, and we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, with no to a leader. S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, and we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, with she's a cool Ali, S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, and we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, with no true Ali,
720, we here no money. And I ain't talking about that fiat, I'm talking about the golden hour. Yeah, we got it. Stirring up the pot, catch shells on top. Calling me the out. Disassociation from the funeral call. Turn down the wall, no statute protocol. This is birthright, better get your civics right. Etymology, better get your language right. The jurors for the life, ready to fight. Common sense is the truth, the way in the life. Time is ticking, better get to thinking. Cause that nickel color black ship is sinking.
S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, and we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, but she's a cool Ali, S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, and we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, with no true Ali, S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, and we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, with she's a cool Ali, autonomous and indigenous, self-governing, no artifice. Understand when it's fake, it don't apply to me. Real, recognize real, heed the words I speak. Truth is healthy for you more, ask Noble Drew. As I walk through Hell's Valley, I know what to do. Jurisdiction of our own, serving Alma Rock. Birthright, mastery, how to be in love. Empress, know about it, yeah, that's who I am. Woolly hair, broad nose, F Napoleon. They say the last shall be first, so we back again. Don't hold small, reference for my nation. S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, and we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, with no true Ali, S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, and we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, with she's a cool Ali, S, Alpha, S, Alpha, 720 once we run in the scene, and we manifesting everything that I dreams. I got nothing but a death on my team, with no true Ali, Islam, 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 family. Sharice L. Once again, all liberties reserved. I hope everyone is doing well. All right, so let's start with our morning prayer. Start on the left to on the right. Allah, Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah, you are my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day. Through our holy prophet, Juali, Islam. Alright, so I got some feedback from my last class discussion, and it was told to me that the first portion of last class discussion, because it wasn't recorded, I should go over it again. So for those who want to go over the zodiac breakdown, I will be going into that again. Um, but first, I wanted to at least speak to you guys about calendars. All right, because it's important that when it comes to understanding timing and understanding cycles, that's what the calendar indicates to you. It breaks down or gives you a calculation of certain days, weeks, months. They break it down into different categories. However, it's all based upon the rotation of the planetary bodies. So understanding the cycles um, for each celestial body it's important, and you can really definitely get more accurate readings um, by understanding timing. All right, so I just wanted to touch on that a little bit today. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, so give me 1 second. Let me just open this up for you. All right, so when it comes to solar calendars, understand that solar calendar is a calendar. The solar calendar is a calendar which dates indicate the positions of the Earth, the position of Earth on its revolutionary rotation around the sun, or its apparent position of the sun, or the apparent position of the sun moving on the celestial sphere. So basically, what that is telling you, let me break this down this way. There are two ways that there's two perspectives, excuse me, that you can look at when dealing with your zodiac chart. Like there's two perspectives. All right, so you have Helio, which is the heliocentric is solar centered, and the geocentric is earth centered. So where they say heliocentric, that is the earth being placed in the center of the zodiac, and it's in the celestial bodies, observing the celestial bodies as it passes from house to house as it moves. Then you have the geocentric, which is the earth centered perception, where you'll be able to observe the sun moving. Like this is why we say the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, because that is the perception that we see from being on Earth. All right, so we're gonna do with the geocentric, just so that it's easy, for people to get. So now, understanding the perspective that we're going to be looking at it, the geocentric. Once again, that's how we see the Earth. From Earth, we see the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. Same thing goes for the moon. The moon, the difference between the special characteristic of the moon is that it doesn't rotate as it's going in its orbit around the Earth. So the same side of the moon is always facing Earth. Like, for instance, let me see if I can give you an example. See if I can Google an example for you. Moon. And so this is a good one. Alright, so let me share my screen with you. Alright, so here you can see it. It's showing you as the moon motions in its counterclockwise rotation, the same side is always showing. You see the arrows indicating going facing Earth. That's the same side of the moon, always facing. Doesn't matter, like whatever position, whether it's waning, waxing, whatever, it doesn't rotate. So it's just going around. It's just going around the Earth, almost like with hawk eyes. It never moves. But understand the sun and the earth and the other celestial bodies, as they are rotating around, as the celestial bodies are rotating around the sun, is rotating on an axis. Not all planets are rotating on an axis. I know that Uranus, rotates on its side. I know Jupiter also has an axis. I believe all of them have an axis. All of them should have a polar um, a uh, a polar axis, whether it is tipped or not, such as ours at a 23.5 degree angle. But understand with the moon, it's very important that you know that it's not rotating how the same way the Earth, the same side of the moon is always shown. All right. Let me see if I can do this one. Maybe it's easier if I show you pictures as opposed to drawing it out. Okay, here's another good one. Oh, yeah. So I'm just going to draw this because I'm going to sit here and search to just draw it. Alright, so what I'm doing now, I'm simply draw out the 8 the 8 sides of, or the 8 phases of the moon that you would typically see. One second. Bear with me, family. I'm not understanding why this is acting up. Bear with me, family. Oh, what just happened? Okay, this is weird. One second. Not understanding why it just stuck on me. Let me see. Alright, so we should be good right now. Alright, so all I'm doing right now is, okay, everything is really choppy. I hope you guys can see me still. One second. Now it's acting crazy. One second, family. Just having technical issues. I'm just going through the backlog, clearing out some stuff just to make sure everything runs smoothly as it's recording. Don't want any issues. One second, family. So right here, as you can see, what I'm preparing for you guys is a layout for you to be able to visually, uh, for you to have a visual of the moon phases. So give me one second. I'm going to put this together really quickly. And it's really quite easy because it's no more than 8 phases. In other schools of thought, they will break it up into like different phases of, they'll break it into 2 phases, and then those 2 phases would be then broken down into 15 positions that you can take note of, and then the 215 will equate to the 30 days, which is no different. It's really no different. The math all ends up to be the same. And once you understand the lunar cycle, it's just a no-brainer. You'll be able to walk outside and you'll know what day of the week it is, or roughly um, how far in the month you are. So it's really a good thing to familiarize yourself with. And so, one second, where? All right. So, like as of today, we are in the last quarter phase. We're going to get into all of that. I'm going to break all of that down for you guys. So, what I want to start off with is the new moon, and we'll work our way around the clock. All right. And so, Okay. So here you have the sun's rays hitting, and this is Earth here in the center. All right. Now, this is considered a new moon, and with the moon, um, the moon and the sun are conjunct in the same sign when you see a new moon. All right. Um, Also dealing with agriculture. This is also another reasoning why it's important to understand the lunar phases because when you think of the almanac, it shows you when it's a good time to plant, when it's a good time to harvest. It keeps you on track with everything as far as the season. So um, when it comes to the new moon, here is where you would this is where it represents the very beginning of the planting cycle. And when the seeds, when you plant a seed, right, the seed sends forth its tender um, shoots under while still underground. So it's like it's trying to implant itself. It's trying to embed itself and get comfortable within the soil. You know, this positioning of the moon also correlates with the winter solstice. All right. So if it was, say, on a zodiac chart, it would kind of look like this because Capricorn is typically up here, right? Capricorn, that's the 10th house. But just understand when you see the new moon, um, what the moon represents in a sense is a quicker timing of what goes on during the solar calendar. So that's why it says, when you see the new moon, it correlates with, well, not correlates, but it corresponds with the winter solstice. Just symbology. If you understand um, if you can understand different timing, you can understand dimensions. It's basically showing you a different scaling of the same process happening. So with the sun, you get a yearly, you get a whole year you get 3 months of 4 seasons to equate to a year, right? With the moon, you get all of that occurring essentially within a month, all right? So now, but like I said, I'm gonna take you through and I'm gonna show you how that works out. All right. So now, um, as we're going through, as we're going through, and the sun is and excuse me, and the moon is traveling. As we're going through, and the moon is traveling, right? Because it moves in a counterclockwise position, right? So now, as the moon is traveling, it's gonna get to its crescent point. Let me draw that in. Use a different color. All right. So that's being fancy. So I will use a different color. Right? Right. So this is what is known as a crescent moon. All right. So in this phase, the moon is waxing, which means that it's gaining light. As you can see, it slowly progresses to gain light as it's moving from the sun. All right, because it's just like it's the positioning of where the moon was, the light that would be reflected is being blocked out. within in the new moon phase. So as the moon is traveling and moves away from the sun, now you can start to see a different angle of lighting occurring. And this is right here, once again, the crescent moon. The moon is waxing and half between the new moon and the first quarter moon. In the planting cycle, this is when the seed or the organism um, has to contend with the surroundings. So it's basically fighting at this point to root itself, to cement itself. Therefore, it can then begin to sprout. Um, and this phase correlates um, midway between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. All right. So now moving on to the first quarter phase. Okay. So now we're moving to the first quarter phase. The first quarter phase is where you see the moon is half shadow and half lit. All right. The moon is waxing at this point and it's squaring the sun. Okay. Can you see that? Like it's squaring. You see the 90-degree angle that is forming from the sun? Because remember, this is where the sun's rays are being emitted. It's coming down, right? So from the sun's rays, you can see the full moon is squaring the sun, all right? So now, this time represents when the organism puts out its leaves and branches, a time of great growth, all right? And this phase corresponds with the vernal equinox. All right. So this is where spring is from. Right. This is where you start to see budding flowers and things start to bloom. Right. That's what it represents. So now moving on to the next phase would be the this would be the gibbous phase. Right. This would be the gibbous phase. The waxing gibbous. All right. The difference between whenever you see waxing, know that the moon is gaining light. All right, the moon is moving to become a full moon. That's the motion as it's going. All right. So once again, you have the new moon with no light, the crescent moon, where you see the crescent right here, and then the rest is shadow. You have the first quarter, which is showing half of the moon being lit and half being within its shadow. And now you're moving to the waxing gibbous. And the gibbous, all you can just think of the gibbous as the opposite of the crescent, where the crescent represents a I suppose like a smiley face, for lack of a better term, right? You see a smile that's lit from the moon. And here you see a shadow smile. This is the gibbous. All right, just to make it easy. So as you're going along, now you're moving new moon, crescent moon, quarter moon, waxing gibbous. Now you get to your full moon. Well, first off, let me tell you what the gibbous is. The gibbous is the phase where the moon is waxing and half between the quarter moon and the full moon. This represents the moment in the planting cycle when the bud begins to form, carrying within it the promise of a flower. Alright, so um, this is the positioning which is half between the vernal equinox and the winter solstice, excuse me, the summer solstice. Right? So remember winter solstice, vernal equinox, summer solstice, and we'll get to the autumnal equinox. Alright? So now we're moving to the full moon. And just put these in really quick. And so now, see here, you have the full moon. The full moon phase is when the moon and the sun are opposite of each other. So now you can visually see how the moon and the sun are 180 degrees um, opposing each other. All right. This time corresponds in the planting cycle for the flower to emerge. The phase symbolically relates to the summer solstice, the time of maximum light in the cycle of the season. All right. So this is where you're going to get the optimum amount of lighting from the moon. All right. And understand the moon is simply a reflection of the sunlight. All right. So now going to the next phase, we have the what is called the disseminating moon. And this is where we get into our waning phases where the moon starts to lose light. 1 second, family. Why is it? 1 second. This thing is glitching and I don't want there to be any disruptions as I'm recording. 1 second, family. 1 second, family. So I'm trying to motion myself to get comfortable using this forum. Let's see. Mm-hmm. 1 second, family. All right. My apologies, family. I just wanted to make sure everything was clear with this. All right. So now, getting back to this. So now you have the disseminating moon, right? Right here. So we're moving from the new moon, moon, waxing crescent, first quarter, right? Waxing gibbous, full moon. Now we're going to disseminating moon, or what is known as the waning gibbous. All right. So now here, the moon is waning and is halfway between the full moon and the last quarter moon. All right. In the planting cycle, this corresponds to the first appearance of the fruit of a plant. In the seasonal cycle, there is a symbolic correspondence to the cross quarter of cross quarter holiday called Lama. All right, and it also corresponds with the fall equinox. All right, or the autumnal equinox. All right. Now moving to the next one, the last quarter. The last quarter phase is when the moon is waning and is squaring the sun once again. All right. So same way it was squaring up here. If you see it, it was squaring the sun up here with the quarter moon. It's squaring the sun. When it's the new moon, it is conjunct with the sun. When it's the last quarter moon, it is there squaring the sun again. And when it is a full moon, it is the sun and the moon are at 180 degrees opposite of one another. All right, are you getting that? All right. So, as I said, we are at the last quarter moon here, and when it comes to understanding, well, let me get to the balsamic moon first. Let me finish the last moon phase. So here, here is the balsamic moon is the waning of the moon halfway between the last quarter and the next new moon. All right. In planting cycle, this is the time of uh, the, the 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 plant becoming mature, while the rest of the plant dies away. All of the energy of the plant becomes concentrated in the seed, being prepared for the next cycle. All right. This phase corresponds midway between the fall equinox and the winter solstice, when the veil between worlds is thin and the ghosts of the dead walk the earth. All right. Well, so they say, so to speak. But understand, when it comes to this cycle, it is so important for you to get it because, once again, this is how we're able to keep track of time. All right. Anciently, we used the lunar calendar, and well, actually, we use both. We use the moon and the sun, but the moon holds a uh, somewhat as a mystic representation because it is said that the moon itself was once an earth. All right, so it's good to just understand the phases and be able to uh, work accordingly with the phases, especially once you understand the constellations, and um, you can then understand the energy that is being emitted through the moon in these different phases. All right. There's also a positioning where the moon is void of course, and it represents a period of time, usually less than a day, when the course of events seems to be more difficult and arrangements may be subject to unexpected changes. Uh, People seem less likely to make solid decisions during a void of course moon, and it's like the actual definition of the void of course moon is that period of time when the moon wanders after her last major aspect to another planet, and until she enters a next sign. All right, so as it's moving, as the for instance, we speak of the sun. If you understand, once you understand the how the sun moves, the sun has its positioning, has two positions where it will stand still for 3 days. All right, this is known as It corresponds with understanding the declination of the sun during the winter, going into the winter season, and once it hits Capricorn, which is the lowest point that the sun can go to before it continues moving east in its revolution of going around. Um, the sun will stand still for 3 days. This is why it's called the winter solstice. Solstice means stand still, standing still. So you have the sun standing still within Capricorn for 3 days. The same aspect applies to the moon, where the moon will be void of course depending on certain conjunctions when it's moving within a sign. So we'll get deeper into that. But I want to, one second, I just want to show you guys a visual of the moon. Because once again, once you understand these phases, once you understand, when you look up, like when you look up in the sky today, and you take note of what the moon looks like right now, um, you will see that it is in its last quarter phase. The moon looks like this. It looks like this. If you were to look outside right now. All right. And as you can see, today is August 25th, right? So August 25th, you see that it's at the last, um, probably like what, 4 days, 4 or 5 days before we get into the new month of September, right? The new moon represents day one. And as it's progressing, you're moving through the month. All right. So here, this would be considered um, day one. This would, as it's moving here, when it gets to the first quarter, that would be considered a full week. All right, that would be considered a whole week. So you've gone through a 1 week of the moon phases of the moon phase, right? Now you're going, as it's continuing to increase in light from our positioning on Earth, from first quarter to full moon, that is another week. All right, that is another whole 7 days occurring. Now from the the full moon to the last quarter moon, that will be another week. So now we've just hit 3 weeks going through following the moon cycles. We just moved out into 3 weeks. Now you're moving again into a new month or a new cycle. That would be week 4 as you're moving in. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So here being where the moon, this being where what the moon looks like right now, we know we can make a educated estimate that we are 1 week away from the new moon or a new cycle beginning with the moon when you look outside. All right, that's why I say it's really so easy to be able to, once you understand and you get familiar with the picture, with the pictures. All right. So once again, just gonna go over once again before I erase it. You have the new moon. You have the waxing crescent. You have the first quarter. Then you have the waxing gibbous. As you can see as well, each of these positionings is opposite of each other on the other spectrum, on the other side. So as you can see, a waxing gibbous, a waxing crescent, it's after the first quarter It's the opposite of the it becomes a waxing gibbous, where you have a crescent of light and then a shadow, somewhat shadow crescent. That would be called the gibbous. Then it's going to the new moon. From the new moon, it is at 180 degrees polar opposite of the sun. All right. So understand, um, just understanding degrees. Okay. Now you're moving down, moving down. Say like this is the center of the middle of a week. These will represent the a full week going past, going by, right? These here, these gibbets will represent the middle of the week. All right. So from when you see a new moon, you see a crescent, you're like, okay, well now I know it's been about three maybe 4 days um in a new cycle. Then when you see the first quarter, you'll know to say, okay, we've just passed 1 week. You see the waxing gibbous in the sky, you'll be able to make a note and say to yourself, okay, right now we've reached like a week and a half of within the month. Once you hit the new moon, you know you've made 14 days, which represents 2 weeks, right? You go down to the disseminating moon, and you get, to say this is 2.5 weeks. The last quarter represents 3 weeks, right? The balsamic moon here would represent 3.5 weeks, and then the new moon closing out one cycle, starting anew, would um, open a whole new month, start off a whole new month. All right. So now let me just erase 1 second. Alright, so I'm gonna erase this just to make another chart for you guys. And I'm going through this slowly because I really want to make sure that anyone who is watching this gets a real basic understanding. Because once you understand the basics, then it's nothing to build from there. All right, so right now I'm just drawing a zodiac chart. Put the constellations in. Alright, so now I just made a chart for you guys. And remember, we're looking at this from a geocentric point of view. Alright, so now this is going to be a little bit different because the moon its face stays in one one positioning. You only see one side of the moon. With the sun, you see all sides, right? It's like the earth is rotating as it's going in its revolution. So is the sun. All right. What I'm doing right now, I am placing a. I'm pretty much creating a lunar solar chart. Just give me 1 second. Let me put this together for you guys. Alright, so 1 second, family. 1 second.